shakele love. This love when I wanna get another one, I go take and do waiting I love, waiting you love, oh. No be waiting I love, oh. Waiting I love, I go do what we love, I go. Go no be vodka, Mr. Money Changer, but when I know the waste time.
That dream of studying and working abroad has been made much accessible to everyone, including you. So worry less about how you're going to get there, because we always make it happen. This is Staff Finders Ghana Limited. We offer a highly professional guidance and support system, both in your university and visa application process. Staff Finders Ghana Limited is a highly trusted agency of the University of the West of Scotland, one of the largest modern universities offering a range of academic, social, and sporting facilities. You can apply for undergraduate, master's and PhD in business and creative industries, education, social sciences, computing, engineering, physical sciences, health, and life sciences. Come through Staff Finders, and for your studies, you get yourself a laptop or a £500 gift voucher. Call on +233 598 4888 04. WhatsApp on +44 7404 711 049. Send us an email or visit our website for more information.
Ladies and gentlemen, in a quiet town in Tunisia called Sidi Bouzid, a young man named Mohamed Bouazizi faced a tragic fate that would change history. On December 17, 2010, Mohamed, a humble street vendor, sold fruits and vegetables to support his family. In a country where jobs were scarce and hope was fragile, that day, local officials approached Mohamed, demanding bribes and seizing his goods unjustly. They ignored his pleas for mercy, leaving him feeling powerless and humiliated. In an act of despair and protest, Mohamed set himself on fire in front of the municipal building. His act was a cry for justice that reverberated far beyond Sidi Bouzid, sparking the Tunisian Revolution and Arab Spring movement that toppled governments across the Middle East and North Africa. From Tunisia, we turn to Nigeria, where the End SARS movement emerged in response to the brutality of the Special Anti-Robbery Squad. SARS, originally created to fight crime, became known for its corruption and violence against innocent Nigerians. In October 2020, a video showing SARS officers killing a young man ignited widespread protests, demanding an end to police brutality and impunity. The Nigerian youth, driven by their shared experience of harassment and injustice, took to the streets in peaceful protests. Their demands for accountability and reform were met with harsh repression. On October 20th, 2020, at the Lekki toll gate in Lagos, Nigeria, Nigerian soldiers fired on unarmed protesters, resulting in death and injuries. Despite government promises to disband SARS, the scars of violence and distrust remain deep. Yet, the End SARS movement was more than a protest against police brutality. It was a call for dignity and justice. It mobilized the Nigerian people's resilience and their refusal to accept a future marred by fear and oppression. Now, let's shift our focus to Kenya, where economic hardship and government indifference fueled protests against a proposed 2.7 billion tax bill. In Nairobi and other cities, young Kenyans gathered to challenge a system they felt ignored their needs and aspirations. Their protests, marked by determination and peaceful resolve, demanded transparency and fair governance. The Kenyan government responded with force, using fear, tear gas, water cannons against protesters. Despite these challenges, the youth persisted. Their unity and perseverance paid off when President William Ruto announced the cancellation of the tax plan, a significant victory for protesters and a signal of their power to effect change. This victory wasn't just about taxes. It was about holding government accountable and demanding better governance. The Kenyan youth's fight highlights systemic issues of corruption and mismanagement, echoing the calls for justice heard in Tunisia and Nigeria. The courage of Mohammed, the resilience of Nigerian protesters, and the determination of Kenyan youth remind us of the power of collective action. Their violence, amplified through social media and street protests, demonstrates the enduring quest for justice and dignity to our dear motherland, Africa. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Political Justice. Today, our main issue is going to be about the Kenyan protest and the results that it achieved. And here to do justice to the issues are my panelists, Charles Muturi, a dear friend of mine, whom I got to know during my graduate studies at the University of Arkansas. He is currently resident in Philadelphia, but still actively concerned about political issues happening in Kenya. So welcome, Charles.
Thank you for having me, Agano.
And my usual, Zita Seshi. Dr. Zita is a sociologist based in Canada. She also has sparked a social media movement encouraging young girls to take up education. Her movements, the members of her movement are called the Zitarians. So Zita, you're welcome.
Oh, thank you so much, Agana. Today I decided to wear, in typical Ghanaian fashion, when we are demonstrating, we wear red. It means our eyes are red. And so I'm standing in solidarity with all my Kenyan brothers and sisters. So I decided to get on my very beautiful and flamboyant red dashiki in support of Kenya and everything that is going on. Our eyes are red, and the youth of Africa is going to stand up against corruption and political impunity by our leaders.
Thank you for the support, Dr. Zita.
Well, I didn't get a memo. Otherwise, I'd have put on red too.
Your patriotism and your commitment to the continent of Africa is shaking, because I'm a woman, and women, how we are. I'm like, no, I gotta show up in full-fledged red, because it in Ghana, when we are going on demonstration, red headband, red, everything is red, because we are not playing with the leaders.
All right. Well, next time. Anyway, so we'll start off with a video of the protest, and then when we come back, I would want Charles to give us sort of a background to what happened in Kenya. I have a number of videos lined up. We'll take the issues bit by bit, But then after we see what happened, transpired on the streets of Kenya, we would come back and then Charles would give us a background. And from my monologue, I mean, it's evident that there are always instigating factors, but there's usually a broader background story to the events that ignited the protests, right?
There are only three things that can make us sit on the table to discuss with this government. Exactly. Thing one, they do not have to amend this thing. Let them scrap it off.
Being called the hustler generation. And during election, these were the guys who were told, hey, we're going to sort you out. Now they're on the streets, they are active. And I love to see that they're active. I've never seen anything like this before. We can't do things haphazardly. The youth are woke. Let's be aware of that.
It would have made much sense if after all these taxes, the government gives us free education, government gives us free healthcare, government gives us subsidized transport rates.
Leo hii ni ya 2024, leo inashika, yani mambo iko fresh, mambo iko yani
Kenyatta Avenue, the streets are charging. The crowds are charging. Hawatasimama maovu ya kitawala. It is crazy. Running battles all day. We are tired. Tear gas all over. The crowds are crazy. Placards, diapers, sanitary towels, everything, you name it, they are carrying it.
What is this about the finance bill that doesn't sit well with you?
All right. I mean, aside from the obvious things that are going on, I'm here in solidarity with, of course, I'm a journalist, I'm a broadcaster, and I primarily speak to the audience that is on these streets. And the one thing that they've been complaining about, no jobs, they've been complaining about harsh economic times. On top of that, coupled with unable to date, unable to marry, unable to settle down, no prospects of even building a house one day, right? They've been called the hustler generation. And during election, these were the guys who were told, hey, we're going to sort you out. Now they're on the streets, they are active. And
all right. So, Charles, your government proposed a bill. They call it the tax bill. And then on Tuesday, I was on social media and somebody just, sort of drew my attention that, can Ghanaians repeat what the Kenyan youth are doing on social media? I mean, we'll come to that. That's the main topic. But that was what actually, drew my attention to what was going on. But give us a certain background to these events.
Okay, so in order to set the background, we have to go back to 2013 when Uhuru Kenyatta and our current president, William Ruto, they won the election and the presidency. And during that time, President Uhuru went on a debt binge. He borrowed billions of dollars from China, for like this big infrastructure projects. In 2014, he went to like the international financial markets. He had a $2 billion Eurobond, in 2014. And that time, I think a lot of African countries were doing that. Even Ghana, I know you guys did a Eurobond as well. And so with that debt binge, moving fast forward to when William Ruto became president, then there were the debt repayments. And so for him, he said that instead of us defaulting on the debt, he would rather like focus on, debt repayments. And even like last week, we finally finished paying the $560 million, for the Eurobond that we borrowed in 2014, so, and in 2021, because the debt was getting compounded, we went to a 38-month restructuring program with the IMF. And so with that, they are the ones who decided on our fiscal and monetary policies. And so now when William Ruto became president, for these two finance bill, so for our finance bill is like that's like our budget process. There's two bills. There's the appropriations bill, and that's for the expenditure side, what the government is going to spend on. And then you have the finance bill, which is the revenue side. How are you going to pay for the budget, And so with the IMF had said that, excuse me, the IMF had said that you need to widen the tax base and find additional measures of paying for the debt. And so Kenyans already with COVID, with the war in Ukraine, there was high food prices, inflation is on the rise. And then on top of that, he wants to tax Kenyans. And so it was like Kenyans felt, this is it, like there's nothing more, like you're literally like milking us dry. And so that's what led to all the anger and the outbursts. And so for us in our in Parliament, a bill goes through 3 readings. And so the first reading had been done in May 13. The second reading was on Tuesday. I think that's when Ghana started following, And so for that one, the MPs, especially on the government side, they were like, they were trying to downplay it, and make it a class issue, and say, no, these are just rich kids, who come here by Uber and eat KFC and have iPhones, they're taking selfies, and then, like they didn't understand the groundswell of anger that was there. And so they pushed ahead for it, and Kenyans were saying, so before that, on that Tuesday in the protest, when they saw there was that anger and all that, on Thursday, they were saying, okay, we'll do it, but they made concessions. But then when they were making those concessions, Kenyans were like, no, we don't want any amendments. We want like to reject the whole thing. But then they passed it. And so that's when it just, that was the fuse that made people go, and they went to Parliament. And for me, I've never seen such a big protest like that in my life, and even for our Parliament to be breached. I think our Parliament was built in 1907. It has never been breached, never during a colonial struggle, never during the 24 years when we had a dictatorship under Daniel Moi, and till last week, so that was actually like a shock, so these are uncharted waters. I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
You are muted.
Yeah. So when the protests began, they thought these were privileged kids.
Yeah, that's how. That's how they wanted to.
Because my understanding is that some of the things that were taxed were, for instance, electronic equipment. So I don't think I mean, I don't know if they thought that these were kids that were protesting some of these things that maybe typically are considered as luxury stuff, because
it was equal. It was there was also an equal levy tax, so there was different taxes. There was 16% tax on bread. There was 2.5 tax on motor vehicles based on the value of your car. There was a tax on diapers, tax on sanitary products, and so for that equal levy was a tax on the imported finished products. And their argument was, let's tax imported products, that will have like an eco waste, so that, one, to stop like that dumping the way countries from the north dump, goods on the global south. and two, to encourage local manufacturing. So that was the argument of how they wanted to do it.
So again, I mean, and I guess this brings us to the question of and whether this, yes.
Agana, if I may, I just, because I did my research, and Charles is spot on in terms of the history and the precedents that have brought us here in terms of Kenya. It's all about debt servicing. But I was following some Kenyan news reports, and it's interesting to realize that the taxes go beyond what is said. They are even trying to kind of make public universities taxed in a sense that such that they should be profit making institutions. So
Yeah,
if
that was I'm sorry. Yeah, that was part of the IMF restructuring. You know, they say, okay, there are some universities that, you know, like we had to shut down, we had to privatize parastatals that aren't performing well. Our national airline, they said, you know, you've been making losses. That one too has to be privatized. And so yeah, it was just like with the IMF, and this is similar to what they did in the 80s and 90s in Africa with the structural adjustment policies, you know, enforce austerity measures while also cutting down on public services, you know. So that is like a double whammy effect, you know, like cut jobs, privatize industries, open the market so the local industries can't compete, you know, and so that also, you know, it's a spiral effect. But what they care is debt repayment. They don't care about the lives of, you know, ordinary lives of Kenyans or Africans in general. And yeah, so that's where we are.
Yeah, I was linking it to the concept of, you know, rich, privileged kids that are protesting. And as somebody who benefited from, you know, public education in Ghana, you are affecting the lives of the ordinary person going to university, because you're saying that if these universities are not profit making, then they would not be funded. That would affect subsidies. And it's also about removing subsidies. We are in, you know, the post-COVID economy. Everywhere it's harsh, and so some level of subsidy would help. My point is this whole position of the political elite trying to make the protest an issue of, oh, it's privileged kids that are, you know, doing this. It's not true at all, because even carbon tax, one of the conditionalities imposed by the IMF / the World Bank is carbon tax, and the key issue is, what contribution does Africa make towards carbon emission in terms of percentages,
It was
right?
like 3 or 4%. Yeah, it's very, you know, small. Yeah.
Exactly. But then you're imposing this on citizens. And so I wanted to reaffirm your point that, yes, the position of these political elites saying that, oh, it's rich kids, it's not. Because when you look at, and it's 7 different taxes that were, trying to be imposed on Kenyans to be able to get enough money to pay off this debt, as I was following Kenyan news. So it is not like, you know, rich kids' problem. It's the ordinary Kenyans' problem, and I'm glad they are out there to protest. Anyway, Charles, I just want to say that I love Millie Odhiambo. I'm a bad girl, and yeah, I just wanted you to say that I've posted, like, I love her. I've been clamoring for Kenyan citizenship the whole week, and people are like, yeah, you should come to Kenya. And then this whole thing happened, but I just wanted you to know that I love the Member of Parliament, Millie Odhiambo, and her resilience and the way she speaks truth to power.
Yeah, that one was from her speech in Parliament. Yeah, she was, you know, arguing instead of like women to be, you know, just all humble and, you know, like saying no, you have to speak out, so that yeah, that's the only way you can be able to succeed in this patriarchal society.
Okay. All right. So, well, we'll move on. You know, on the first day of the protests, Ruto was very defiant. He gave a speech and called the protesters names. When I listened to the speech, he was speaking on both sides of his mouth. In one respect, he was accusing violent protesters and also saying that he was going to protect Kenyans at the same time. He sought to distinguish between the protesters and Kenyans, which I felt was just mere word salad. I mean, it didn't really make sense to me. I'll play that video And then we'll come back and talk about the resolve of the Kenyan youth to push on, even in the midst of all these, the terrible treatment from the police and how the state was unleashed upon them.
Against an unprecedented attack. Today, Kenya experienced an unprecedented attack on its democracy, rule of law, and the integrity of its constitutional institutions. An otherwise legitimate expression of the fundamental rights and freedoms of assembly, demonstration, picketing, and petitioning of public authorities by a section of law-abiding citizens of the Republic of Kenya was infiltrated and hijacked by a group of organized criminals. Most regrettably, today's attack on Kenya's constitutional order has resulted in the loss of lives, also destruction of property and desecration of institutions and emblems of our sovereignty. Today's events mark a critical turning point on how we respond to grave threats to our national security. I assure the nation that the government has mobilized all resources at the nation's disposal to ensure that a situation of this nature will not recur again at whatever cost. I thank our security officers who were on duty today for applying themselves to the best of their abilities in the defense of Kenya and its people. Accordingly, I have directed all the organs of our national security to deploy measures to thwart any attempt by dangerous criminals to undermine the security and stability of our country. As the people of Kenya go to bed tonight, I give you my assurance that your security, that of your families, and property remains my utmost priority. To the young people of Kenya, who I must thank for helping our country organize our democratic discourse around issues, I thank you and assure you that the conversation you have begun around pertinent issues of our nation will continue to inform our policy and governance decisions. As I promised on Sunday, this conversation will not be in vain. I will not only champion for the cause of issue-based, policy-oriented, and tribeless engagement on critical national issues, but also provide a framework for this conversation to be processed and its outcomes implemented. However, our national conversation on any subject matter must be conducted in a manner that respects and honors the foundational values upon which our nation is established, namely constitution.
All right. So, I mean, we've had enough. But, I mean, what do you make of the speech? You know, he acknowledges the youth in their engagement, but he makes it sound as if without the protests that went on, they would have really listened to the youth.
No, they wouldn't have. That one, for that speech, you have to understand who he's speaking to. He's not speaking to Kenyans. He's speaking to his puppet masters, the West. He's trying to allay their fears, saying, like nothing is going to happen. Their property is secured. And it was two piece, in my opinion. Also, it was to justify the violence inflicted on the Kenyans. So you can say, hey, There were peaceful Kenyans, but it was hijacked by a few goons who tried to go to parliament and try to desecrate our institutions. And but that's not the case. So and for him, in his 2 years, his whole presidency has been centered on him trying to legitimize his power. Like when he came to presidency, he barely won. It was 50.49%. And so for that, his foreign policy was trying to legitimize himself. So that is by the closer he is to other countries, especially like Western nations, the more they it's a stamp of approval on his presidency. And that's why he has gone to like 60 something, I think 68 trips in 38 countries in less than 2 years. That's like unprecedented. And so and for him, and especially the US, it was a marriage of convenience. The US is afraid of Africa being taken over by other competing, global powers like Russia or China. Yeah, and they have been losing. They lost in Niger. They were forced to remove their troops there. Chad is saying that they have to remove their troops there as well. And so for them, they're trying to find one way to get their troops on the continent. And so they had agreed to build the biggest base in Kenya and also to upgrade. They have one down at the coast. It's called the Manda base, where they do the drone surveillance, in the Horn of Africa.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah. But I mean, you mentioned that perhaps it's also another strategy to consolidate his power and that he barely won the election. And I would have imagined that consolidation of power means that he should really get home-based support, become more popular at home, right? If you barely won the election, and I don't imagine that Kenya would opt for any other form of government besides a democracy. I don't ever, I mean, well, knock on wood, but I don't think there would be a coup d'etat in Kenya, just based on my understanding of how their democracy has transpired over the years. And so I would have imagined that anybody who is democratically elected, who wants to consolidate power, would be to actually increase his base back home rather than trying to appeal to foreign powers.
but you also have to understand how he came to power. Like this was the first time that the politics transcended beyond ethnicity. Before it would be you come, you say my ethnic group has this amount of people, my ethnic group has this amount of people. If we come together, we can defeat the other side.
Ethnic coalitions, yeah.
Yeah, and so and since he wasn't like from a political class, it's not like the Kenyatta family or the Raila Odinga, the Odingas, because on the Odinga side, his father was vice president. On Kenyatta side, his father was president. So there was that political dynastic class that he wasn't. And for him, with this election, the past election, that is, he made it to be a class-based issue, and that has never happened before in our political discussion before. And so once he did that, and he's told the youth that, hey, we call them mamambogas, the women who sell the vegetables, down by the road, and the boda is the motorbikes. He told those people like, hey, let's come together and we can defeat it. And so the way he framed it, he was able to beat the political elite, but then that isn't secure because he still doesn't have, the context from that. It doesn't matter with the people. It's like at the top, that's where you feel secure.
Okay.
And
No,
so,
yeah, I see what you're saying. So basically, he has no strong sort of, let's say, ethnic or family leanings in a way that he'll be held down in the event of. And then he came based on his populism, right, by appealing to the masses and essentially making it more of a class division here.
Yeah.
And the tricky thing about that is you come into power and then you're unable to fulfill the promises.
Exactly.
And then the masses are going to turn against you because you didn't keep your word.
Yeah.
Okay, so I get it. So I would understand why. I mean, keeping your word as an African president, I mean, it's
But, but,
difficult in
but,
a way.
but then you have to understand, like our almost all of our leaders are there because they're propped by the West mostly. You
Yeah.
know, yeah, that's a fact. You know,
Okay.
whether you with the in West Africa in the Francophone area, you know, you have all these dictators. Like the president of Cameroon is like 92 years old. You know,
Yeah.
so and he's been there for like 40 years. You know, so
Yeah.
he's not there because of the people. You
Mhm.
know, so that one, that was a way of him wanting that like legitimacy. And so when it came, you know, to the US with the Biden administration, the Trump administration before like totally ignored Africa. You know, there was no engagement at all, you know. And then the Biden administration, they came with all this fanfare. They said, hey, we're going to do that, you know. Uh, President Biden invited African leaders and promised he was going to come in 2023, but he didn't because, you know, there's the war in Ukraine, there's the whole war in Gaza, you know, so, and also wanting to contain China as well. So it's like Africa was given a backseat as well. So the US wanted to see who they could like be the poster boy or like an example of the US Africa partnership. And
So
uh,
that picture of him sitting in Biden's chair in the White House, is it a real picture?
oh yeah, that's real. Yeah,
Okay, that
that's
happened.
real. Yeah, yeah, that actually happened. Yep, yeah,
Oh,
during
wow.
the state
Okay.
visit. Yeah, we which people are like that. If there was ever a picture to show, you know, to encapsulate the whole thing, is that one. You know, because that shows it's not a meeting of equals. You know, like hey, you know that's the same thing if you're doing like a White House tour, you know, like that's not something a president would do. So it just shows, you know, and even coming to that, like the US ambassador, you know, her name is Meg Whitman. She's a billionaire. She used to be the CEO of HP and eBay. And
Okay.
so she, like, now Kenyans call her the prime minister
Oh,
because
really?
yeah, yeah, she has been, you know, like at State House, the presidential palace, you know, like multiple times. You know, she is the one who spearheaded the whole Kenya sending the troops to Haiti. That was her idea,
Mm.
you know, and so the way she has been like and front and center, because normally U.S. ambassadors are normally like in the background. They don't want
Yeah.
to show that there is any partisanship, but she was like all in, you know. And I think that is what also fueled the anger, because people are like, okay, President Ruto is not the one making decisions, then who is, you know? Like everything is being imposed. Even we have IMF advisors in our treasury, you know.
Yeah.
It's like everything, they are like every single step in every department is being, all those decisions are being made in Washington. And that was the,
Yeah.
even the Haiti deployment, Kenyans didn't want it.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, let's just touch on that a little bit
Mhm.
because I mean, I'm from Ghana. We know our police, not
Mhm.
to demean them or anything. And I know I have an understanding of the capability of Ghanaian police. And I have followed events in Haiti, the gangs that are on the street. There's a guy they call the barbecue or something like that. He used to be
Yeah.
a former police officer in Haiti. Now, based on my understanding of Ghanaian police, I don't think they are up to the task of
No,
maintaining
yeah.
the peace on the streets of Haiti. And I would
Mhm.
imagine that is the same with the Kenyan police.
Yeah.
So, are they
We
sending people's kids to Kenya to get to Haiti to be slaughtered or what?
Yeah, they're just going to get slaughtered. And the the advice that our first lady said is, oh, we're going to pray for them, as if prayer is going to like help this whole situation. One, we don't speak the language, we don't speak French, we don't speak Creole, you know. Two, we are woefully when it comes to equipment. Like the Haitian gangs are getting their weapons from the US,
Yeah,
you know. And like us, you know, we're not gonna compare with our AK-47s to like some, you know, AR-15s and, you know, all these rifles that they have, you know, and modern equipment. And so yeah, it's just going to be a you know, a bloodbath, you know. And it's unfortunate, And the Kenyan police who are doing that out of desperation because they say they are going to be
But
paid.
get paid.
Yeah, and they were supposed to get like I think $1,000 a month, but now the rumors are saying that the government took 80% and they're going with only 20. So like $200 out of that. Which if you do that, that doesn't make sense because that guy is not going to risk dying because of $200. There will be like corruption, bribery. It's not going to solve the pertinent problems. And also another thing, it was unconstitutional. The prime minister who was there was not elected. So that government was, the government agreement that they did, that was not an actual government. So
Okay.
even the agreement was unconstitutional. The court stopped it, but Ruto, he just pushed it, and that's the thing that people are saying is like, he says, oh, there's public participation, but when the public comes and says, hey, we don't want it, he does it anyway. So people are like, okay,
So
there's,
the deployment of the police is one of the sources of the anger.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I mean, Zita, I mean, if you come in here, I don't know if you have any question or any addition to make, but
No, for me, these are interesting times, and I think that every week when we come here, some of us have emphasized the importance of social media and mobilization. I saw a Kenyan protester saying that the government's intention is to shut down the internet, so the whole country might not be able to have access to TikTok, X, Facebook. So please, and he mentioned Ghana, Nigeria, Burkina, everywhere, just keep talking about Kenya and keep talking about Kenya. So for me, it's just the ability of young people to really mobilize, and it's just like a movement is happening on social media. It happened on social media before it translated because they were gathering people. Some protesters were streaming live. They said, and I'm watching, and I'm like, over 700,000 people are like on, and they are liking it, and it's like I'm streaming live, and the guy is standing close to a military car, and it's just a level of bravery and fearlessness. And of course, we are going to get into that debate of a comparative analysis. Can this happen in other parts of Africa where things are really bad? And Nigerians have been speaking up. Can this happen in Nigeria? Can this happen in Ghana? Because Kenya's economy might be bad, but when you compare to what is happening in Ghana, it is worse. And so there is this Kenyan youth have created this level of infectious bravado, and it's the whole Gen Z thing. They said, they are not afraid. I saw a slogan. It's like they are not even afraid. It said, our fear cannot be bought with some. It's just amazing stuff that is going on. But for me, my concern is again, any demonstration or revolution comes with destruction of property. For me, that is my concern there. The parliament have been torn down. Apparently a guy who had the torch, like it's like sort of moose or something, the
The
power
mace. Yeah, the mace, yeah. Mhm.
apparently has been killed with 6 bullets, and that I'm hoping that gets media attention. That why was he killed, by who, that they put 6 bullets through him? For me, it's the way the parliament was destroyed. At the end of the day, it's the tax payers money that's going to reconstruct that. So for me, it's the looting of innocent people's businesses that have been destroyed. That is a concern to me. But overall, the message is loud that power belongs to the people, and if you continuously take the people for granted, we will hold you accountable. The Kenyan youth, the Gen Z youth have proved that it is possible, and we are hoping for peaceful but resilient. It's just the ability to even be on the street. They said these kids have been on the street the whole day. You can't move them, and it takes a level of conviction to be able to do that. Can other parts of Africa replicate this in a more less destructive way, but effective way? Are we able to hold our leaders accountable? For me, what a wonderful time to be alive. Like, it's just, it's an amazing time to be alive. But I would urge all Kenyan youth, I know you're frustrated. Mothers are beginning to cry. We want our children to come back home safely, because the numbers are climbing up in terms of lives that are being lost. So we want you to protest. We want you to stand against the level of corruption, not just in Kenya, but in Africa wide. And I just want to touch on something to land my plane. This whole issue of Africa has never been free, and we are not free. Let us stop this whole thing of celebrating Independence Day. We are not free. Our founding fathers who fought for our freedom, the Kwame Nkrumahs, the Patrice Lumumba's, name them. The guy from Senegal, he's my favorite guy. What's his name again? I've forgotten his name. Amazing guy from Senegal. What's his name?
Leopold Senghor? Or who?
No, no. Burkina Faso. Sorry, the Burkina Faso.
Sankara.
Yes, it's
Sankara,
just Sankara. Like, it's just amazing, and the vision they had for Africa. But it's like, we were not convicted. For some reason, they were not able to imbibe that vision in us for us to uphold the torch and keep going on. Africa has never been free, and it's not free. And we are seeing it with this, our relationship with the World Bank and IMF, all these stringent conditionalities that continuously make us the weakest link, make us, colonial puppets, and our inability to be resolute. Kenyan's president posture in the White House in its entirety is indicating subordinate versus what leader, and our leaders have always taken that subordinate my colonial master disposition in all engagement, and we are tired of it. And so I want to thank Kenyans for the youth for bringing this revival of energy, but I want them to remain calm. Please do not destroy, your public infrastructure. At the end of the day, taxpayers' money will go back into, rebuilding those institutions. Remain resolute, stand in the face of power. Most importantly, your mothers need you to return home safely.
Yeah,
right.
that was a great point. I'm sorry again. I was just going to say, yeah, you're right. Like we, during independence, we gained political freedom, but we did not gain economic freedom, and that's, that factor is what we're still fighting for, decades later. And when it comes to Kenyans, and especially with the use of social media, that was really commendable. Like they had spaces on Twitter, that with like thousands of people on there, and coming together, and initially that's what the leaders said. Oh, this is just Twitter warriors, it's not going to be reflected, and that's why they downplayed it. But then once the people went to the streets, they're like, oh, now this is a serious thing. And when it comes to like destruction of property, I understand with the anger. Mostly it was aimed at the political leaders. Even if you see it, they went after their businesses, they went after their homes. They right now, because our leaders, I don't know if they do it in Ghana, like especially like our politicians, they like harassing people on the road, driving on the wrong side of the road with their sirens, the bodyguards, and trying to do that. People are saying for like a whole week, there hasn't been that. They have learned to actually use the traffic rules, follow them, and they used to be flashy, and display, like you'll have ministers with Rolexes, thousands of dollars, shoes, thousands of dollars, and then they would go to churches. We have this thing called Harambe, which is like, coming together, like fundraising and pulling money and resources to either build schools or churches. But now politicians are using it to launder money. So they're going to churches, and they have like literal bags of money. Recently there was this guy, he's an MP, he got like 20 million shillings. That's like $200,000 cash. What is it?
Oh, that's small.
Yeah, I mean, but that's just one weekend. That's what I'm saying. That's one weekend that he is bringing $200,000.
Okay. No, but I'm just being sarcastic here because we discovered over $1 million cash in a minister's home.
Yeah.
In fact,
and even you remember, even in Gabon as well, whenever they're dictator, they found like suitcases of money, euros, dollars, and just there, literal.
Yeah, so it seemed like the African politicians are united in the manner in which they are corrupt.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at some of the things they do, as if they speak to each other on a daily basis. I don't know if, but because you're just speaking, saying things, and they seem like, the siren situation where, they run
the same WhatsApp group,
It's just basically the same thing. But, we have talked about the benefit of social media here. in terms of the memory, the sheer amount of memory that social media has provided us, said that we can now hold politicians accountable based on their previous words. But I am seeing another dimension of social media that could be useful to the African youth. And I am foreseeing a demonstration that is going to happen across African countries simultaneously by virtue of social media, just because of the fact that these things are similar in so many ways, that it's very likely that at any given time, certain injustices could be happening across Africa at the same time. Say that through social media galvanization, a simultaneous, demonstration would take place across multiple countries across the continent. And I think, we talk about the shortcomings of social media, but it has its positives. And I think if African youth, the credit goes to the Gen Zers, right? If they utilize it well, it could yield benefits that perhaps we, the millennials and those who succeeded us, haven't been able to achieve. But this issue of the IMF, now, we grew up when we went to college, we learned about this structural adjustment thing and the inequality it created and put us in a relation with the West. That's continued that dependency relationship. If you read the history, it almost feels like at some point it was necessary. For instance, in Ghana, we were facing a lot of shortages of basic goods, consumer goods, to the point where there were price controls and there was rationing of these goods. And so to some extent, even though the structural adjustment came with certain unforeseen or even perhaps anticipated consequences, they also addressed the problem. But now we are putting ourselves in that relationship, which really has nothing to do with solving basic needs. We have gotten ourselves in this debt situation where nobody knows what the money is being used for. They are funding very luxurious lives, right? Politicians are living in luxury. And when you cry that they should cut down the expenditure, what they do is they go to the capital market and borrow more. So this is something that is common to all of us. Like you just mentioned, the Kenyan case is the same in Ghana right now, where we have a huge debt. And when there are cries about government cutting expenditure, they don't want to listen. All they do is, impose more taxes. So the issues are common, and perhaps one day we are going to have a common demonstration across Africa. And those artificial borders that were created for us would mean nothing, right? In geography, we always say space has been annihilated by time. But in this particular instance, space has been annihilated by social media. Those boundaries are going to be gone. But anyway, let's move to the next video, which is Ruto basically, making an about turn from his initial defiance. And then we'll talk about how is it that the Kenyan youth were able to get the results that they sought. All right. Okay.
With that breaking news out in Nairobi for you, Kenya's president has just addressed the nation, informing the country that he will not sign the 2024 finance bill, which was at the heart of Tuesday's deadly and chaotic protests in Nairobi. Have a listen.
Consequently, having reflected on the continuing conversation around the content of the Finance Bill 2024 and listening keenly to the people of Kenya who have said loudly that they want nothing to do with this Finance Bill 2024, I concede, and therefore I will not sign the 2024 Finance Bill, and it shall subsequently be withdrawn. And I have agreed with these members that that becomes our collective position.
Well, the comments come less than 24 hours after President...
So how were the Kenyan youth able to get the job done? we've seen so many demonstrations, especially in Ghana. We had our own Fix the Country. It was related to similar issues, but the turnout was quite disappointing. And there've been historically, we've had demonstrations that haven't really yielded the results that the demonstrators sought. So what is it? What was the resolve of the KNU that delivered the goods? Let me go to Charles, and then I'll come to Zita. You've been on social media, so even though you are not Kenyan, I believe you have an idea as to what did the trick.
Yeah. So I think it's because they had a singular message. It was one focus to reject the finance bill, and it was that rallying call. And Kenyans are very I think we're one of the largest people, in Africa when it comes to social media usage on Twitter, on TikTok. It's very big, and especially on TikTok, there was the explainer videos and the way they broke down that you had lawyers coming together to come and explain to the public. You had tech guys, making apps, like breaking down the finance bill, translating it into local languages, so it was that collective effort. And you had spaces on Twitter, where you had thousands. I think it was like 70,000 at times, like just people coming here listening to why it was that public participation on the social media front that translated into on the streets, and once for Ruto, that he didn't want to do it. It was a concession that he was forced to do it. He was forced to like eat a humble pie, because for him his whole presidency he has centered on saying that we are not going to grow on debt, which is it's a valid argument. He's saying that we can't be borrowing to grow, and so we have to generate our own sources of revenue, and that to be able to help us. And
we just have to go back to the age-old saying that cut your coat according to your cloth,
size,
right? Yeah. But they don't want to do that.
Yeah, and to the point where he's gotten the nickname Zakayo, which is a character in the Bible, Zacchaeus, the tax collector.
Yeah.
And so and he embraced it, and so now the call is people are saying, Zakayo, come down, like the way Jesus told Zacchaeus, like come down, and people are saying, hey, you're getting to the point where you're just your ego, like you feel like you're talking to Kenyans, at Kenyans instead of to Kenyans, and that is when he saw the groundswell of people, and the thing that made him actually stop was it wasn't just in Nairobi. If it was just in Nairobi or like a few major cities like the coastal city of Mombasa, or in the western part, which is called Kisumu, where there is the opposition stronghold, it would have been one thing. But it happened in 37 out of 47 counties, so this was like nationwide, and even in his own strongholds, in his own backyard, people are already protesting it. And so the thing was, which is ironic, was he wanted to unify Kenyans. He always comes and says, hey, let's not have this ethnic based divisions. And for the first time, that Kenyans are actually united, but then it's against him, which is ironic. He has actually solved the thing that he had been saying, hey, let's not.
But he galvanized them on a common issue, which is
a common issue,
the promise of a better economy. And so their opposition to him now is united on the same front as well. And I like that, right? The ethnic-based divisions those days should be over, and people should only be united by their common well-being when it comes to their material well-being, rather than these issues of identity. And I think it's the right thing.
Yeah, and even another thing that made him also climb down was pressure from the MPs as well, because it wasn't also targeted at the president. That's what I'm saying. Like, if you look at videos, I know Dr. Zita, you'll see them. People are going, just beating the MPs who voted yes. There are some who are now wearing T-shirts saying, sorry, please forgive me for voting yes on the finance. It's really funny because, for years, the politicians have been like, hey, I'm the big man. We even call him, hey, Mr. Big Man, and I think it got to their heads, and now they have to be reminded that actually the power belongs to the people, and you are a servant. You're not just like, a boss. You're there to represent what we have to say. And for Kenyans, it wasn't so much as being taxed, is where our tax is going to. That's another big factor. If we will be, one thing is like, we're getting taxed, but I'm seeing the roads, I'm seeing the schools, I'm seeing the hospitals, but we're not seeing that money is going towards debt repayment and money being stolen. And to the point where he talks about austerity and living within our means, yet he took a private jet to go to the US, instead of taking the local Kenya Airways airline. We have direct flights to the US. He didn't want to, but he comes and says, hey, we should tighten our belts. In the expenditure, in the appropriations bill, they put a billion shillings, which is like $10 million for furniture.
Furniture for who?
For State House, the presidential, $10 million. Wow. The deputy president's house, they say they earmarked renovations for $6 million, yet it was built for $4 million. So it's those things. The office of the first lady, $6 million. She hired, I don't know, 100 intercessors to pray. Like you're giving, putting people on a payroll to pray. And they even have now offices. Okay, first lady I can understand, but now there's an office for the deputy president wife. Okay. There's an office for the prime cabinet secretary's wife.
Yeah.
So it's those kinds of things. They have earmarked money for foreign travel, for entertainment, buying cars, new cars, but yet you want to tax us. So Kenyans are like, no, we're not going to do that. It's not either you go and like, if you're really serious about cutting down, it should start from you. He also wanted, on top of the cabinet, he wanted to create 50 extra positions called cabinet administrative secretaries, so that he can pay back for the politicians who helped him. Which is unconstitutional. The court said this is unconstitutional, but again, him wanting, it's either my way or the highway, like ignore the high court ruling. And so those are the kinds of things that people are saying, his ministers, people who are like flat broke, like 10 years ago. Now you have expensive Rolexes. You're like, okay, where is the money coming from? What business are you doing?
Yeah.
How Kenyans
So, for me, I'm an ardent supporter of democracy. And I think Kenyans have demonstrated that if we insist democracy is going to work, you got MPs to rescind on their initial vote. The president himself had to eat humble pie in public and, set the words that he concedes. So I think if we put pressure, democracy is going to work. And that's the way it's supposed to work. And again, the issue of expenditure. And I think African governments, we have to demand it of them that they have to live within their means, just like the rest of us, right? The average employee in Ghana, Kenya, maybe a minister, your status and perhaps your standard of living is going to be slightly ahead, but it cannot be a world of difference.
Yeah. If you see how much a minimum wage earns compared to like a member of parliament, it's like 700 times, and
as you said, and the same thing that they say in Ghana, people who basically, they took trotro like everybody, and all of a sudden they become ministers or deputy ministers or, presidential staffers, and then they are basically competing with, the top 1% earners of the world. So, Zita, before I come to you, but I just wanted to make that point that perhaps we need to legislate this, that, our ministers and our public officers have to live in proportion to our economies. The size of your economy, the amount of revenue that your economy generates should determine how ministers should live. If they have to drive Toyota Corollas, then it should be so. It's never said anywhere that a minister must ride in a Toyota Land Cruiser. If your country doesn't earn enough money to afford Toyota Land Cruisers for ministers, then they should ride in Toyota Corollas. I mean, so I don't get that there's sort of this assumed status of ministers, irrespective of how well the country is doing.
Yeah,
Which
that's yeah, and
it's a very problem, a big problem in Africa.
yeah,
So,
and your question about how other countries, other African countries can do that, like already I'm seeing on Twitter, on TikTok that youths from South Africa, from Nigeria, from Ghana, they are saluting Kenyans. Like I didn't even know whenever there was the protest on Thursday, there was actually Ghanaian MPs in the Kenyan parliament, and they were running away, in the tunnels. And the comments were like, man, I hope when they come back, they should be humble, because this is going to happen to them as well. That's how I even found out, hey, there was even Ghanaian MPs, and they were running for their lives, which was like, it was funny when I saw that. But yeah, like I think it has already inspired. I saw even Museveni, he didn't sign the bill, he sent it back to the Ugandan parliament. So they're already shocked, they have been jolted because Africa has the youngest population in the world, and it's going to double. And this is a ticking time bomb because you have millions of young people with no jobs, with no, they don't see a future. And if like
they generally said they can't even date.
Yeah, you can't date, man. It's like you're too broke. You can't afford it.
We currently live in a world of social media where, this idea of, they talk about this 50-50 thing, and then women are, there's a talk that, they don't want 50-50 men or something like that. So I think the demands of women these days have become higher than what our parents experienced. And so there's all this pressure,
Yeah, there was another young Kenyan guy who was like, he went out and he's like, hey man, you older guys, man, stop dating our women. There was all, everyone had their own issues, but I think
these are real stuff,
Yeah, it was real stuff, So and even for you, Dr. Zita, when you were talking about like burning, if people don't feel that they own anything, if they feel like I don't own anything, then there is nothing for them to, they don't have anything to lose, and so you're going to feel that anger. It's going to be reflected, I think Dr. Martin Luther King said, like riots are the, the calls of the voices that are unheard, like you will hear it, and that message has been heard loud and clear. And I hope for the young people, whether it's Nigeria, whether it's in Ghana, especially like, you guys are Ghanaians, I'm seeing how you, the corruption is through the roof, man. Like people are suffering, inflation is high. I hope that like there can be mobilization and we can finally, rid ourselves of this colonial, imperial system that has been imposed on us, that where like our resources are being extracted, our labor is being exploited, but we are not gaining anything from that. And I hope that this will be the start of a movement, will be the fire that will go across, and Africa will finally be free.
All right. Okay, so Zita, I mean, let's conclude on this matter, and then maybe you can speak about it in the context of how can we achieve similar results in Ghana? I mean, and again, I insist that I'm an advocate of democracy, and I consider, going on the streets and demonstrating against any unpopular policy as fundamental to the working of democracy. It's an instrument of democracy, and I feel that we have to use it more often than we have. And so, but when we do use it, we have to get the results. So learning from the Kenyan situation, how do we replicate similar results in Ghana?
I mean, I am not optimistic for Ghana simply because Kenyans were able to put away their ethnic and tribal allegiances and say it's Kenya first. And so Ghana is not there. In as much as, and the interesting part is that Kenyan youths on TikTok have been in Ghanaian and Nigerian spaces telling them, hey, you guys, you better, go and protest. I saw something like a scheduled demonstration in Ghana for September something, but I feel like the Ghanaian youth are so distracted. They don't have the resilience of the Kenyans. Like these people had placards saying that our fear has been bought by poverty. It means we have nothing to lose. And there are young women who are saying, I'm here and I know I can die and I'm here. I was shivering, you know, because I remember the words of Malcolm X. He said, the day I chose this course is the day I died. When you are leaving your house and you know that I might not come home, but I'm willing to die for Kenya, to see change for the unborn, that is a different, because the change happens in the mind before it manifests in the physical. Ghanaians are not there. I am like, I should be making money living off social media, because every 5 minutes when I get a break, I'm like, what is going on? We are not there. We are not angry enough because of what? The ethnic politics. Even 6 months to election, and people are posting and talking about, you know, the current government and the level of corruption. And Agana, you read through the comments and it's just a shame. There is this Ghanaian TikToker who did, he did like you know, a mini election. So he goes on to the market with the box. He has printed the parties, you know, and the presidential candidates by himself, and then he goes to a certain aspect of the market, you know, women who are, and these women are in the market and they're still voting for the incumbent, like he did, and you don't understand why. And it's all ethnic and tribal sentiments, and it is not, you know, Ghana first or Nigeria first. Kenyans, the thing happened in the mind before it translated, so there's no way of stopping them. And it was even the women, young women. There was a lawyer, she was being arrested and she stood, you know, professionals. It wasn't just jobless you know, Kenyan youth that were angry. Professionals, there were lawyers, people who had something to lose. They stood there. I saw women who were brave. I'm like, I'm not gonna do that if I'm in Ghana. But they were so bold. They stood. One young lady went ahead, pushed a military, and guess what? A young man, and the military was coming for. A young man jumped in front of her. He could have lost his life if a bullet was about to flow, but he was willing to die protecting a young woman who was fighting. It is a mental revolution. Change happens in the mind. When you have it in the mind, nobody can stop you. And it happened in the mind of Kenyan youth and the unstoppable. Unfortunately, the graceful president of Zimbabwe had the effrontery to do a press conference to warn the youth in his country that you do it, it's game over. You are all gonna, yes, we will not soft hand you. Everybody's going down. Imagine Kenyans demonstration have sent a shiver of panic among African presidents, and some, the disgraceful Zimbabwean president had the effrontery to come out and, you know, put fear in his people and say, if you try it here, it will not go well with you. And so what Charles is saying is true, that we are all watching. And I've seen a banner for Ghana in at September. It says September. I don't know why the demonstration is all the way in September, but there's a banner out from Ghana. There is a rising, and if it happens in Nigeria, it will be bloody, because Kenyans might be very resolute, but Nigerians are on the other end. If Nigerians are the most stubborn group of Africans, if they say they are going hard, you can't stop them. And I'm beginning to see that sentiment. Social media, the way these young people have leveraged social media, and we see change happening in real time, it's just blows my mind, the ability to coordinate, the ability to mobilize. But Ghana, I don't think Ghana is there. I'm going to be honest. Ghanaian youths are extremely distracted. You know, you go on Ghana TikTok today. I was just scrolling and they keep talking about sex and relationship, and like, to wind it down, you talk about not being able to date. It is not just a Kenyan problem. In America, a research was conducted and they said, when you hear of mass shooters, you know them before you know them. When a system has, and most of it in America, they are talking about most of the people who engage in gun violence have never had any interaction with women for more than 12 months. So any group of men who are not able to have any form of intimate interaction with women for more than 12 months are likely to be extremely violent. That is why I say women, we have all the power. And we need to learn to how to harness and leverage that power because we hold it together. If we are not in your lives, you all will destroy the world. And we are seeing it among the desperate youth. So it happens in the mind. We applaud Kenyans. I saw some CNN reportage and an innocent person was crying out about his shop. I hope they spare the innocent people and go hard on the political elites. I hope they were able to even get some of the Ghanaian, whatever politicians who were there, shake them a little bit. So when they come back, they appreciate. But there is this rising sentiment among Gen Zs. And when people have nothing to lose, like Charles said, they don't care. They will destroy everything because they have nothing to lose, including their lives. Because at this point, they feel they don't have a life. They have nothing to live for. They can't work. They don't have jobs. They don't have no money. They can't even date because we, the women,
most people still live at home. We have most of our colleagues still live at home, right? You can still live under the roof of your parents and successfully date. So I mean, but
Ghana, on that note, Ghana is not yet there. Because compared to what is happening in Ghana, $58 million for a cathedral that is not a cathedral, a national cathedral, that is like a pit. $1 million in the house of a former member of
she was a minister at the time.
Yes.
Yeah.
And look at trying to sell state assets, even this the level of corruption in Ghana. Look at the other case we talked about the other time. Wi-Fi, free Wi-Fi, almost over 50 something million Ghana city. They didn't do anything with the student Wi-Fi and tablets. Students don't have the tablets. They didn't get the internet to be able to, benefit from the education system. Like I'm telling you, what is happening in Kenya is a tip of the iceberg of what is really happening in Ghana. Yeah. But like I tell you, Ghanaian youth are not, they are not rifled enough. They are too distracted. Yeah. They are not focused. And I'm not saying they should go out there and be violent, but we are not angry enough to hold our leaders accountable. Yeah. But I hope that Zimbabwean president, I hope that his youth teach him a lesson, because it's one thing to say that, oh, this is happening, we will solve it. I have seen what is happening in Kenya. I will do better. But to threaten the people who gave you power, that if they try it, you are going to deal with them, that is unacceptable. Yeah, shame to the Zimbabwean president. A big shame on him.
That's absolutely awesome. But again, I think Charles may have actually told us what the problem is, right? And Ruto, it may have been the source of his own current distraction. And of course, in a good way, maybe not to his favor, but in a very good way. You mentioned the ethnicity then, and that might be the bane in galvanizing the Ghanaian youth. Ghanaians are still highly, they people take polarized in terms of politics, right? And most often these polls are also ethnic related. And so if we are unable to solve that ethnic division, and the thing is, ours hasn't led to any significant violence. We are highly tolerant in so many different ways. But when it comes to certain issues, we are very reluctant to even look at the other side of the conversation. And it's politics, in particular in Ghana, has taken very deep-seated ethnic lines, which perhaps those lines have to actually be, erased for something like this to happen. Because some people wouldn't demonstrate just because of their loyalty to a political party. And again, that link with ethnicity even solidifies it the more. And that might actually be the panacea to, our problem in galvanizing the youth. But when will that happen?
Yeah, I was saying there was what Dr. Zita was saying with regards to Ghanaians, coming together, and they said a problem is for Ghanaians, you guys will plan a protest like a month,
ahead of time,
and then do the whole thing with ask permission from the police and all that. Then it will still be denied, and then that will they will throttle the process, and then that's
How did
how.
you learn about this? Because that's exactly what happens in
Yeah,
Ghana.
I know. I mean, I prepared Ghana.
Oh yeah,
I didn't just come.
there's been so many times that protests have been denied, and all
Yeah,
the
exactly. So
places
that's why.
everywhere you have to go to, and all that. That's like,
Yeah, and
it means,
so the way to do that,
yeah,
I think it's for Kenya. Even this did not just come now. This is years of like civics.
yeah,
Like even to get our new constitution, it started from like 1990. Where we had to fight to have a multi-party system. Then it was still years and years of fighting and public participation, civics, making sure people understand how the whole process works. I think that is a factor that's missing. But
yeah,
even for us, even ethnicity is still a major factor. But I think now we are going, and which is nice that we are finally like transcending it. Because for people, they'll be, I am Kikuyu first, then I am Kenyan. Because for some people, even let's say like my dad, he was born 6 years before independence. So yes, he's from his ethnic group is like he will be ethnicity first, than Kenyan, and it's only like the younger generation, with the Gen Z that
yeah,
don't have that like deep, rooted, with their ethnicity and their culture, and so that is also like what happened that made it possible for this protest to occur. So I think for Ghana, it will be just civics, what you guys are doing, just talking about it, like convincing one person, having spaces, even if you go to Kenya with the jobless areas, corners or whatever, people are talking about politics, you know. So it's not just like people are just not doing anything, you go to the streets of Nairobi, there's a place in one of the gardens, Jivanji Gardens, and people have open air, political discussions, and so that, just having those, talking about issues, that actually, those small steps will gain into having, like a big impact, and I hope for Ghanaians, they'll stop talking about relationships and be like, hey, let's talk about this useless cathedral. We could be building roads, we could be building factories, we could be building infrastructure. Why do we need to have this big symbol that doesn't mean anything? You can have $1 billion building, but what is it for if your people are living in slums? It doesn't make any sense. So
Mutiri, I'm not going to introduce a religion here, because I think you have a companion
I
here.
understand. Whatever, like, yeah.
No, I know. I'm just making a joke. I mean, you and Zita are going to agree on the religion. To be honest with you,
Yes,
I don't
yes,
want to. I don't want to cause any problems for myself.
yes. And
So
I just wanted to also say that
yeah,
with Ghana, I think in Ghana for us, why is it that we want to demonstrate and they are putting the date on September? By September, people lose interest. You see,
yeah, that's what I was going to ask you
the
guys.
momentum
Yeah,
is gone.
the momentum will be gone like 3-4 months.
exactly.
That, yeah, I saw it was like September 7th. I'm like, no,
Yeah. Oh, you saw it too. Okay.
yeah,
I'm like, why are we gonna wait till September?
Yeah,
There's
I
something
gotta
is
be
speaking
spontaneous
about
sometimes to get the result.
collective effervescence, collective energy. It's like the spirit of the
Yeah,
Kenyan youth have shaped Africa. So it's like everybody's now, but the presidents are sitting on the edge because right now anything can erupt anywhere in any part of Africa, right? The
yeah,
energy that they fed us with this energy, we are supposed to be mobilizing to be on the streets next weekend.
yeah, exactly. Now, yeah, it should be like another Arab Spring, but in Africa, be like
but
right now they
yeah.
should be protesting Nigeria, they should be protesting Ghana, they should be,
Exactly.
Anyway, I'm trying to keep our time, under an hour and a half, and but anyway, but there was a loss of lives, and that is regrettable. And again, this speaks to the manner in which African leaders react to protests. And I think we have to find a way of holding them accountable when it comes to really controlling the crowd and their reaction to protesters. It's unacceptable. Nobody should have to go out there to protest for a better life and end up losing that life. So I think that's one aspect that we need to, address. I don't know how we're going to approach that, but our condolences to the families of the individuals that have been lost. I came across a video of a police officer who apparently, I don't know if he was one of those who performed acts of brutalities on another person, but it turned out that his brother was killed in the protests. Now, and what police officers have to understand is that their conditions are far below the ordinary citizen most of the time.
Yeah, that's
So
what
if
I
they
failed to
use you as an
understand.
instrument,
Yeah, that's what I felt to understand. Yeah, because they live in horrible conditions. They are paid poorly. There was another police officer that lost his arms because the tear gas gun, it was just faulty. But they still continue to brutalize the Kenyans who are fighting for them.
But generally speaking,
I don't understand. But when you are talking about like police and the ways, you have to understand that our police was set up by colonial government
still intact.
to to enforce the laws. It wasn't a people centric, like to serve the people. No, it was to maintain maintain law and order. And until we have like major police reforms, Kenya, we started. We said that we'll have an independent police oversight authority to go and look at all the extrajudicial killings instead of having the police themselves, because they won't, and have ways of how they can interact with the public. But until we have those major reforms, the way the structure has been set up, even the way police are excluded from the community, that's on purpose so that you don't have a connection, because if I don't know you, if there is that anonymity, then I can beat you, I can shoot you, I don't care. But if I'm like, you're there and you're meeting Zita, and Zita is like, hey, Agana, we chill here, you live down the street.
I know your brother and all that.
I know your brother, man, we went to the same school, so that's how we can just dismantle the whole colonial structures that we still haven't dismantled yet. So that's how we can be able to make sure that police work for us instead of like seeing us as a threat.
Yeah. Anyway, so if we go down the decolonization rabbit hole, we're not going to end today. And so, but again, well, Charles, thanks a lot. You've helped us, you sort of, unpack most of the issues and understand them better. But we normally, this show is usually for Ghanaian politics. We are in an election year, so we typically tend to talk about the various political candidates and the things that they have said. Now, I mean, I don't know how you feel like meddling into Ghanaian politics, but there's one issue that I want you to comment on related to Ghana politics. I'm going to play a video here of one of the presidential candidates who happens to be the sitting vice president. I want us to analyze the similarity with the position that he's trying to take with what happened in the case of Ruto, who was an incumbent vice president who was running for president. Was Ruto running on the record of the president? Because I know there was a falling out. But in our case, the current president and the vice, there's no falling out. But somehow, he's trying to run away from the record. So let's listen to him here, and then when we come back, we know we'll let you, we'll do it.
Omo duty, the form chair Ghana duty. And yes, sir. Togo, Omo duty, the form chair Ghana duty. And yes, sir. 80 society, Nipa Bebre, Omo di container Echo Togo. No more Kotuya Omo duty, no more smuggling, Sani Emana Bagana. Now you're duty. The policy for Eba, Ghana duty cannot be higher than Togo duty. Your duty no ain't change Togo duty. Ebeye the same and I say ebeye lower. Yele sanwa obiya ko smuggling and ko Togo esamba habiyo.
Okay. Charles, do you understand Chi, or you want me to translate?
I understood it. That's
you understood it. What do you think he was trying to say there? What was he saying?
I think it was talking about like the taxation, the import duties, right?
Yes.
And wanted to like comparison between Ghana and Togo, right? So yeah.
So apparently people are, smuggling stuff across from Togo because the duties are cheaper there.
Mm-hmm.
And then he is complaining that, he's going to introduce a policy that will end it. But this is somebody in power. He's the current vice president.
Yeah, so the question is why are you waiting until the next election? Why not do it now? So I don't know why he's trying to do that. In the case of Kenya, the first time Uhuru and Ruto were like, they were tied to the hip, and the reason they did that was because both of them had cases against the International Criminal Court, so it was either you either hang together or you hang alone.
Yeah.
So that's what made them come together. But in the second term, there was a fallout. Our former president still hasn't told us what it is that they did that, there was just that fallout. But he was actually like, even though he was deputy president, he wasn't in the cabinet meetings. He was completely, removed. All his allies were taken from like political parliamentary leadership. So like total, like just cut out from any decision-making processes, and so I don't know how that is with with Ghana's case, but that's how it was for Kenya. And so that's why, even though Ruto was deputy president, he could come and say, hey, I'm on the outside.
Yeah.
And the the former prime minister, who was not in government, he got the baggage of Uhuru, and the misfeelings of government. And so people, like, that election it wasn't people necessarily voting for Ruto, but it was voting against Uhuru. It was a referendum on Uhuru because he said, this is my successor. And people are like, no, we don't want that continuation, because it was like state capture. Uhuru became like extremely rich. It was only his businesses that were like making money. He even went and bought the dairy industry in Ethiopia. His banks are now in Uganda and even in the DRC. It was just more of like him getting more, consolidating all these resources at the expense of Kenyans. And so people are like, no, we don't want that continuation.
Okay.
And so even with Ruto, the way he framed it was dynasties versus hustlers. And in that one, there was on Uhuru's side, it was the Kenyatta family, the Odinga family, the Moi family. Those are the three biggest
political families.
Political families that we have in Kenya. And so people are like, no, we are not going to continue with this. And so that's how we were able to like vote in for Ruto. And so but for Ghana, I'm seeing that I don't know why people would vote in for the incumbent. The opposition guy is called John something, right?
John Mahama.
Yeah, I don't know if that is he's running again, right?
Yeah, he's running, yes.
So, but and for you guys, it's similar to the US because you have these two big parties that just go back and forth. But I think they still all are the same, with when it comes to corruption or being accountable,
There's some similarities, yes. But again, so what you're saying is that what this guy is attempting to do is not similar to.
No, it's not similar at all.
Because
No.
I mean, he is the current. He has attempted in so many instances to distance himself, but again, take credit for certain things that were done. And
that's the same thing with Senegal. With the prime minister, he wanted to run as like, hey, new thing.
So but when some of us say sometimes you get tagged as being partisan, but it's interesting to get your perspective because I think it's very important. Zita, I mean.
No, I feel like Ghana, I think once in a while you need to bring other African panelists to. I've enjoyed the session today because at least I've taken a break from Ghanaian issues, so I don't get a high blood pressure. Charles has been like a really wonderful addition to today's discussion. I'm just because earlier in the week I was telling my Kenyan followers I have over 100,000 followers on TikTok. So some of my Kenyans is every day, love you from Kenya. And I'm like, give me Kenyan citizenship because they call me the Millie Odhiambo of Ghana because I'm ruthless. I speak my mind, and the men don't really like me on the platform. So it's been amazing watching everything go on in Kenya, and just having a Kenyan perspective, chiming on Ghana issues. Ghana, you and I know Vice President Baumia is just a sinking ship. You are in power. I don't know why he keeps talking of future terms, like, oh, when I come, but you've been in power for 8 years. Like, you're a vice president. You have a PhD in economics from Canada. You touted your credentials as the reason why, you were chosen, and you're going to transform Ghana's economy with your PhD and your brilliance. And you've 7.5 years in, you've not done anything, but you are giving us a promise of the future when you have had power for almost 8 years. I mean,
yeah, when I saw the video, I actually thought it was from the 2016 campaign. I didn't know it was current.
Oh, it's current issues.
Yeah. So I had to ask, and they told me that was current. That's how come I brought it up here.
Yeah, he doesn't have any campaign messages. That's the thing about me. He keeps jumping. It's like this week, digitalization. I'm going to create a mining investment bank. Then in next week, it's importation tax. And, you can't do everything. Yeah. Have a detailed plan. Because you only have 4 terms and then hopefully this is what I would do in the first 4 terms. Like I'm saying, African politicians, when you're giving us campaign promises, we are done with the campaign promise where you go and eat and you sleep with your wife, and then you are in a good mood and you say, hey, I'm gonna do this. Policies that are not backed by data. We want policies that are smart, that are attainable, that are measurable, that are specific. And so I'm just tired of his whole message, because it's like it's scattered. It's like he just wants to pick something to just make us go like, yeah, he's gonna do this. But when in terms of data, in terms of evidence, and in terms of his ability to deliver, the evidence is not there. And so I mean, I hope in all these things, I hope that Ruto was successful in making Kenyans think that it is Kenya versus the political class, and I hope that can be Ghana's position one day. Ghana is too ethnocentric and tribalistic for us to even have a discussion, because we are having a discussion and people are mentioning tribe, people are mentioning other things, and that is why they are leveraging that to even the corrupt, the incumbent government that is highly corrupt. They are playing on our not just ethnic but religious lines. They are using religion against us, using our ethnicity against
Yeah, I wanted to since you just mentioned that, there's a video here of the majority leader, the same political party, the majority leader touting, those ethnic issues as some credit that should be given them for selecting a candidate. And maybe, this will give further insight. But we don't encourage this type of behavior, and we are bringing it up here for Ghanaians to essentially desist from it. We have to move away from these sentiments. I look at the ordinary Ghanaian. We are highly tolerant. We accept each other. I lived next door to a Muslim family. Until then, we still consider ourselves as family. Those religious divisions never, but politicians tend to exploit them and make them to be what they are not. They draw a hard line in the sand, which in practice, political practice, they work for them, but they don't really necessarily translate into the kind of human beings that we are. But let me play this video.
It is the first time ever in the history of Ghana that a political party has elected a person from a minority tribe and a Muslim to lead it in an election. This is the first time. So for me, Dr. Baumia represents the hope of the future of this country. Now, members of the minority tribes in this country will have that hope that it doesn't matter the tribe they belong to, once they are hardworking.
Okay, so I'm not going to finish it for the sake of time, but these are some of the things that we talk about. This is the majority leader in parliament, and he's essentially extolling his party for selecting somebody he considered as belonging to a minority ethnic group, whatever that means, right? But You know, you guys, your final thoughts. Just, give me your concluding thoughts on everything. If you can summarize everything together and give us some hope for the future in terms of Africa, then that would be great. And then we'll conclude. And I want us to finish, quarter to the hour. Yeah. So, Charles, you had yes.
Go ahead. Yeah.
You're muted.
Yeah, so for me, I would say, again, thanks for, giving me the opportunity to come and share with you, the Kenyan experience and for our side and why we are doing, we are protesting and what we want to gain out of it. And when it comes to like with ethnicities and stuff, we're still facing it, even in Kenya, when politicians get caught, they go back and say, hey, we are being targeted. But when they were stealing, we didn't get like a single cent, from that. But whenever they get caught, they go back to their tribal cocoons and say that. So it's still an issue for us. But I think we are hopefully like transcending that and getting it to an issue-based politics. And I think that's what Ghanaians and Nigerians and the rest of Africans should be focusing on. It should be issue-based, and even for Ghana, please, just I want to encourage you guys to, and be engaged, that the civics is really important. Learn, even for me, this has been a learning experience because I have never paid attention to our budgetary process. I didn't even know we had two bills. I didn't know there was like an appropriations bill. I didn't know there was a finance bill. I didn't know like how a bill goes through parliament. Now all these things that I'm learning, and which is even now Kenyans are saying next week, like we'll be following whenever there's anything that the government wants to do, they put it in the Kenya Gazette. They're saying now all those notices, we're going to be on it. And then that's like some civic engagement that hasn't been seen, and to the point where even the political class are saying, okay, yes, you guys, the public participation that is enshrined in the constitution, you guys are actually doing it, and we're going to listen. And so that's how I think Ghana should focus it. It shouldn't focus on ethnicity. I didn't even think ethnicity was an issue because like Ghana is the poster child, of like democracy and stuff. You guys, when you're saying that, I'm like, man, this is not Ghana that I'm hearing that you guys, ethnicities, every time, it's elections are free and fair, you guys go through the democratic process. You haven't had like a dictatorship since I think the 80s with the what's the general's name?
Rawlings.
Rawlings, Jerry Rawlings, so like for decades you guys have had a strong democratic process that's the envy of African countries. So even for me now I'm shocked, I'm hearing all this.
We have our good side, but we can do
better. But it's good to share that, because even for us, before we had our post-election violence in 2007, 2008, we had like all our problems were just like swept it under the carpet, and it came out, and if you don't speak out about it, it's going to come out in a more volatile way. So it's good that you guys are doing it and saying, hey, this is an issue that we need to address, and I commend you guys for that. And I wish you guys, success in the next election, but I don't want you guys to wait until September to do something about it. I want you to exercise your rights today, June 28th, 29th. I mean, be like, hey, whether it's going in the streets or even talking online, it doesn't have to be, any small act, has a cumulative effect. If you just do one tweet or one Facebook post or one discussion online, that, just it piles up and has positive effect, and so again, thanks again for allowing me to come and share my views.
All right, okay, Zita, so final words, and then
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Charles, for gracing it. I mean, you've been a breath of fresh air, and it's just been amazing. You've concluded it really well. We wish our Kenyan brothers and sisters the very best. We respect and honor the bravery of the Gen Z population for being resolute and standing firm. We have all learned something from their spirit and their bravery. I want them to continue with the engagement, the civic engagement online, because they might not understand, but they have inspired many youths across Africa with their acts of bravery. We are paying attention, we are listening, and we hope and pray that they do not, the government does not try to subvert and cut any form of internet supply and shut the country down. That is what they're trying to do with information, so that, it doesn't look bad, because they are trying to appease the Western powers. And again, it puts Ruto in a very weak position, that you don't have control over your country. You don't have you don't have that authority over your people. And that is something that like he rightly said, he's trying to get the endorsement of the West, even though he won by a slim margin. He understands that being positioned as somebody who is favorable to the West helps his presidency. And so that is why he came out to initially call them as thugs and whatever, criminals. But after a few days, 2 days, he backpedaled and conceded. And I like that. We need to show them that we are the ones in power, and that the ordinary people need to be respected. On Ghana, I am a Ghanaian, but I always say that hopefully in my next life I can't become Kenyan. I'm really sorry. But I've had my food day being Ghanaian in this life. And in as much as I love being Ghanaian because we have peace, we are touted. I was just looking at Kenya gained independence in 63, Ghana 1957. Like, we are their older, Ghana is a motherland, so we are your older sister. But what do we have to show for it? Ghana, we tend to be extremely peaceful, which is good. But I think to a large extent, it has allowed our leaders take advantage of us. Because at the end of the day, once there's any form of violence, you see Ghanaians, so it's okay, it's one Ghana, let's calm down, and they will start putting a national song, we are one people, and one Ghana music all over, just to calm tensions, and we have always been hospitable. That's why we have that good credibility globally, that Ghana is a poster child of everything positive Africa. But I think that character have also allowed our leaders, be extremely corrupt and treat us badly, because they know that no matter how much you push Ghanaians, no matter how much we are ethnocentric and tribalistic, when it comes to any form of disruption or anything that can hurt us, we will all say, oh, let's calm down and choose the side of peace. We want peace, but we also want to make sure our leaders don't continuously take us for granted. So thank you, Kenya, for letting us know it is possible. And I hope the youth of Africa rise up. Zimbabwe, don't mind that president. We are solidly behind you. If there's any act of corruption going on, go out there and protest, and the world is watching.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, guys. And I would like to thank our viewers for joining us today. And then, we hope you are able to join us again next week to do justice to the issues. And as you said, we will try from now on to get diverse views and incorporate other Africans into the conversation. Our issues are so similar that perhaps if we speak in unison, we may be able to address them better than we are currently doing. Even though perhaps our politicians don't speak to each other, they seem to be united in the manner in which they conduct themselves. So, but anyway, so
no, I just laughed. Did you watch there was a video circulating online where they said Ruto came to Ghana to take advice from our president with the e-levy bill, because apparently Ruto visited Ghana quite recently, and so they said when you keep bad company, you get bad advice, and so people were saying that Ruto got the whole tax your people advice from our president Nana Akufo-Addo. So that was also circulating, very popular analysis by a Ghanaian female politician that was circulating online. So I thought that was funny. They're like, if you keep bad company, you get bad advice. So Ruto, stay away from Ghana's presidents.
All right. Well, enjoy the rest of your weekend.
All right. Bye.
Bye, guys. So
Titatia, undidle sikugatia. Satasua, zadle sikugasua.